So it's been about a day since the Sonic Superstars trailer got revealed, which means that initial hype or initial reaction would have simmered down a little bit, and there's some things we need to talk about. More info regarding the game, surrounding the physics, things like that. And I want to clear up my opinions on the game because, of course, it always gets misconstrued, right? So we're gonna get to all this right now. But if you subscribe to the channel already, please make sure to subscribe. So yes, if you haven't been keeping up, Sonic Superstars is the upcoming classic Sonic game. It's coming this fall. Playable Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy with local co-op 4-player. Zippo, the leaker, has basically been talking about this game since 2021, with one small change. He thought it was a modern 2D game. Everything else he got right. Was the Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy playable. He got that right. He didn't get the release date right. He said it was coming 2021. Clearly it took them longer than that, but he was the first one to mention this game, and while it wasn't exactly the way he said, Zippo was onto something clearly. So let's get the elephant out of the room quickly. Obviously I wasn't expecting the game to be revealed at Summer Game Fest. I was streaming the event on my non-Sonic channel, link in the description. So the reaction you got was 100% like unfiltered, because I saw the trailer at the start and it looked like it was going to be a Sonic Origins little promotional thing, and then it turned into this classic Sonic game, and then I realized it was the quote-unquote modern 2D game. So yes, that initial reaction was tainted by wanting something else that was told to us by leaks, and it was actually something a lot different. That's not Sega's fault. Obviously, they didn't promise us a modern 2D game, so they didn't switch up on us, right? That was just how I felt in the moment. I'm not going to judge this game harshly for not being modern if the game is quality. That being said though, I do need to clarify some things, because obviously Sonic fans don't understand nuance, so if you're not super hyped, that means you hate the game. I never said once this game was bad. I never said once that it was going to be trash. Nothing of that sort. Just because I wasn't leaping from my seat at the sight of classic Sonic doesn't mean I thought the game was bad, okay? Just because I don't think it's like Sonic 2, Sonic 3, or Mania quality doesn't mean it's bad. Just because I compared it to Sonic 4 doesn't mean I thought it was bad. I enjoyed Sonic 4. It wasn't amazing, but I mean, I fucking love the soundtrack for Sonic 4. I know that's an unpopular opinion, but if I feel it, I'll say it, right? Speaking of unpopular opinions, Sonic 4 Episode 2 special stages are some of the best in the series. But I don't hate classic Sonic. Like, seriously, I don't hate classic Sonic. I loved Sonic 1, 2, 3, Mania. I even enjoyed the classic levels and Generations, even though the modern levels were mostly better. Classic Sky Sanctuary goes hard though. I've just never really been a fan of that 3D model of classic Sonic. It always seemed way less cool than actually the classic Sonic sprites in those original games, or even like the Toei Sonic design that you see in the Sonic CD intro looks cooler. And that's kind of my point. It was the cool factor, right? Now look, this game makes perfect sense for Sega to make. From a business standpoint, I gotta hand it to them, right? Because the one thing everyone kept saying when this game got announced is this looks like the Sonic version of New Super Mario Bros. And that makes logical sense for them, right? A nice little co-op game that the casuals can play, and it will get the money, it will get the sales, right? New Super Mario Bros was huge. Like, the hardcore Mario fans always tended to prefer 3D Mario, but if you look at the sales, New Super Mario Bros. Has outsold every 3D Mario game, even the ones that are seen as way more iconic, like Super Mario 64, Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. New Super Mario Bros. Has outsold all of that. In fact, the only 2D Mario game that has outsold New Super Mario Bros. DS and Wii is the original Super Mario Bros. That's it. None of the 3D Marios have outsold New Super Mario Bros. Unless we're including Mario Kart, because that's 3D, but in terms of like the 3D platformers, none of them are sold more than New Super Mario Bros. There's a reason why they kept pumping it out, and even got to the point where they tried to integrate it into 3D Mario with like 3D Land and 3D World. The casual market is big bucks. It's easily accessible for the masses. That's what Sonic is trying to do here. That's what Sega's trying to do here. They're trying to get that big boy market with something that's not too offensive, not too challenging, not too crazy. Because remember, like, reviewers were complaining about Mania. They were dying. Like, obviously the game was high quality and it still got high scores. I'm not trying to say it didn't, but there was a lot of rage from the journalists. Even me on my first playthrough of Mania, I think I game overed on Flying Battery Act 2, which coincidentally is now my favorite level in the entire game. And in fact, Flying Battery Act 2 in Mania is my favorite classic Sonic level, period. But when I first played it, I got a game over on that level. Reviewers were mentioning back then how Mania was too difficult and had too much classic philosophies of level design. You know how the games were harder in the early 90s, late 80s, whatever. It still had a life system, so you could game over and you have to start from the beginning of the zone. So if you game over on Chemical Plant Act 2 boss, then you'd have to start from the beginning of Chemical Plant Act 1. And even outside of journalists, I used to watch like casuals streaming Sonic Mania, like people that, oh, this looks cool, and they bought it because it was cheap and it looked cool, and they were struggling, dying, game overs. Like, people were like The game is fun, but I didn't finish it. Like, it happened. So them taking the ideas of Mania, making a game that's a lot easier, has 4-player co-op, charging $60 because they know people will pay for it. I mean, look, this is a great business. I can't, like, from a business-minded person, like, this makes sense for them, okay? That being said, I don't have stocks and shares in Sega, so, like, business acumen aside, I have my own personal opinions as a Sonic fan, right? People tried to create the illusion that I thought the game was going to be bad because it was classic Sonic and not modern Sonic, that it's just a simple model swap. Why would it make a difference? It's way more than a model swap. But again, I'm not saying the game is going to be bad because it's classic. I have to reiterate that. But why I wanted it to be modern is more than just a model swap. Yes, the model matters to me, obviously. I've never really enjoyed that 3D model of classic Sonic characters. It always worked in 2D sprites, but it never really worked for me in 3D. Obviously, because when they first introduced that whole classic Sonic 3D model was in Generations, and they needed to contrast to the more grittier or grown looking modern Sonic, so they made classic Sonic look like the baby softy character, right? Which is never how I saw classic Sonic when I actually played the classic Sonic games from the 90s. Now, to be clear, I do believe there's gonna be modern skins in this game, because if you go on the official website, they say if you subscribe to their newsletter, you can get a modern Amy outfit for the game. And they're not gonna just have a modern Amy outfit and not have a modern Sonic Tails and Knuckles outfit, right? I'm guessing the Amy outfit comes from the newsletter, and the Sonic Tails and Knuckles outfit will probably come through some additional purchase, right? Wario64 already found the game for Nintendo Switch at $69.99 at Best Buy on their website, and it was causing a lot of steam because people thought the game was going to cost $70. So much so that the official Sonic Twitter had to respond and say confirming base game is $59.99, which means just like they've been doing these recent releases, there's going to be some kind of deluxe version that will cost more, and I'm assuming this deluxe version for $70 will probably be like, includes modern Sonic Tails and Knuckles skins that you can use instead of the classic ones. Basically saying, if you hate classic models so much, pay extra for it, bitch. Cool, alright, cool, I'll pay extra. I'm a sucker like that. But why did I want the game to be modern in the first place? Aside from the model, because the model is important, but that's not the real full story. In my personal opinion, you don't have to agree, modern Sonic was always cooler than classic Sonic. It's as simple as that. They're two entirely different aesthetics and feels and vibes, right? Like every time there's a big new classic Sonic fan game, people ask me why I don't play it or showcase it, and it's because they're all the same. Classic has a set level of philosophies, and if you deviate even a little bit from those philosophies, the classic fans will get mad and say this isn't classic enough. So they always keep it in that rigid form of things that makes a classic Sonic game. Like the way classic fans threw a hissy fit when Sonic 4 had a homing attack. To me, the definition of making a classic game feels like they're intentionally holding certain new things back. At least with the Mania team, they were able to get one thing in there with the drop dash, because that was a truly amazing move that felt like a natural evolution of the classics. But in general, you can tell that Sega is afraid to deviate too much from that classic formula because they want to keep that audience. And to their credit, they did at least add rail grinding to this game, which wasn't added until the modern era. And it's got dash rings, I guess, so cool. So they were willing to at least add something that was outside of the precious classic philosophies. Personally, I love to see it get taken a step further, add more modern related mechanics. A wall jump would have been cool because you couldn't do that in the classics. I guess maybe Knuckles could kind of, if he was climbing and then he jumped across, but it wasn't like a regular wall jump. Again, a lot of people got mad that Sonic 4 had a homing attack because it felt redundant. But if you were designing a modern 2D game to actually be modern, you could have a homing attack and use it in a way that's not the bare bones minimum, right? So don't just have classic Sonic level design and just slap on a homing attack. You make levels that kind of rely on it. Like, you remember those like DLC day levels in Unleashed that had those tight homing attack challenges? You could do something like that, for example. Another example of something that's more of a modern element is like the trick system. We saw that heavily used in Sonic Rush. It was used in the advanced games to a lesser degree. The boost is also more of a modern mechanic. I'm not saying it had to be a boost title, but that's just an example of something that's more modern that wouldn't be included in something that's trying to be a classic 2D game. Enemy design is another thing. Like if it's a classic game, it's gonna have more of those colorful badnik aesthetic kind of enemies, whereas if it's a modern game, they could do more modern looking enemies like mechs and the kind of things you'd see in something like 06 or even Unleashed. Modern characters with different movesets. Another example, right? This game is featuring Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, obviously because they were the only ones that were available in the classics. Fang the sniper because he was in the classics, right? That means if they want to keep that classic sheen on the game, they can't have characters like Shadow or Silver. So for example, if they had made a modern game, they could have had a playable Shadow, a playable Silver. Silver could have had his psychokinesis. They could have designed levels that would have involved psychokinesis in a 2D modern title. That would have been crazy to see. 2D, but we won't see that unless they want to go the make a classic Shadow and Silver route and add them as DLC or something. I don't know. But if you want to keep that it's a classic game brand sticker on it, you can't deviate too far from the set rigid rules of the 90s, otherwise people will get upset. Even the locales and environments to a degree. I mean, they showed off like this 2.5D version of Emerald Hill, which, okay, cool. And they showed off like that Geometry Dash looking level with the wisps or whatever, like fake wisps. Chaos powers, what is that what they're calling it now? Okay, cool. But like compare that to like the first Sonic Forces trailer when it was still called Project Sonic 2017, with that whole dystopian look that they were going for that got us so hyped before we realized that the game was overall mid. But like that initial reaction when you saw that Project Sonic 2017 trailer, that kind of thing is not a vibe they would go for with a classic game, right? Maybe they might have one level like that, I don't know. But it's not a vibe they would go for. Whereas if you play something like Sonic Rush, they got all these crazy funky ass levels because it's not forcing itself to be classic. It's got its own modern style. Even in the music, it sounds different. It sounds more interesting, more engaging, which is kind of what you want to see in Sonic, right? Not to say that the classics didn't have great soundtracks. Obviously they did. It was just more of a different style. I would say Sonic 3 was the most funky of the classic soundtracks because they had the Michael Jackson producer influence and whatnot. So it kind of deviated away from the more game sounding music of like say Sonic 1 and 2. This is more than just a classic model versus modern model debate, right? It's the same issue we had with games like Sonic Lost World, where it was technically a modern Sonic game, but in the whole philosophy, it was oozing like this classic mixed with New Super Mario Bros.-esque vibe, this generic style and aesthetic that comes with that we're trying to appeal to the classic fans. With Sonic Lost World relying on the badniks and the figure 8 running animation, even though it was technically a modern Sonic game, it didn't feel like the modern edge that we wanted. I brought up sales a lot for Mario with New Super Mario Bros. So for Sonic, what's the highest selling Sonic game? It's Sonic 1. After that is Sonic 2. Not including the Mario and Sonic Olympic games, which kind of move some numbers as well. But for Sonic games, it's Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. If they want the mass market, they gotta appeal to the casuals who grew up with the Genesis or some re-release version of the classics, which means using Sonic 1 special stages in this game when even Mania, that was built on rehashing, still managed to come up with special stages that felt fresh and unique. But of course, Mania didn't sell that well, so why would they copy Mania, right? I mean, why would they do that? But in their defense, they had some kind of Beam looking special stage, so one could argue that maybe the Sonic 1 special stage is just a bonus, the same way Sonic Mania milked the blue sphere as a bonus stage. Cool. Nonetheless, by them making this game very classic inspired, it means that it's going to be giving us the same kind of level design we already saw in the classics. Probably not as good, but possible. Which, again, it will make them money. I'm not denying that. I could probably list a million classic Sonic fan games that will do this kind of thing already, just not in 2.5D. And even Sonic Fan Remix did this thing in 2.5D as well. So it's very hard to get excited for something like that personally, when the classic thing has been done well so many times that an official product doing it not as well is just not something that I'm gonna go crazy over. And back on that point I made earlier about the classic Sonic fan games or why I don't play a lot of them. Do you wanna know what my favorite 2D Sonic fan game is? It's a fan game called Emerald Ties. And from a physics standpoint, and even to some degree level design, it is a classic Sonic game, right? But then at the same time, it's got a modern feel to it. They got like this grittier looking Sonic. He's got like the soap shoes. I'm usually not even a big fan of soap shoes, but here it works. They got like elemental shields in there, but it's got like different abilities that weren't in the classics. Like one of them gives him like that silver like hover kind of thing that he had in 06. There's even some kind of slight rock music in there as well. Like it feels aesthetically different from like every other classic Sonic fan game that just tries so hard to be like the classics again that it's like not treading any new ground. Something like that is a good foundation for what I'm trying to say here. Like if you remember when Sonic Advance 1 came out, they were trying hard to be more like the classics. So Sonic Advance 1, to a lot of the classic fanboys back then, they were calling it like their Sonic 4 before the name Sonic 4 was tainted, obviously. This is 2001. And then Dimps realized that they could do something different, and so Sonic Advance 2 deviated and became its own thing, and the classic fans got mad, but it spawned its own fan base. And then Sonic Advance 3 of course did its own thing again, and then of course we had Sonic Rush after that, and Dimps were basically on fire. It's just not me saying the classic philosophies are bad, it's just that we've seen them so many times. For those people that want that, that's great, cool, get what you want, okay? But for those people telling me the only reason I'm mad about this game is because the model is not modern, that was not the point at all. That's just one cog in the whole classic versus modern debate. If it was just about a model, then I would have praised Cyberspace and Sonic Frontiers for being modern 2D, right? But I didn't, because they still had the classic aesthetic, Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, Only the city theme is something that wasn't classic. And of course, cyberspace overall was not a quality experience, but that's a whole nother thing. But anyway, that's my reasoning for why I wanted it to be a modern game. But at the end of the day, it's a classic game, so we're gonna judge it like the classic game it is. So what's the big debate with the classics? Physics. Someone on Twitter has done a physics comparison to the trailer to basically prove that the physics are going to be good. I'll play the clip here. And yeah, it pretty much looks like the physics are looking decent. I remember I covered a rumor or a leak before that suggested that they were able to take the physics code from Sonic Mania because it was using the same engine. Now, I don't know if they actually managed to do that, but if the physics are this accurate, and they've never been this accurate like ever in a Sonic Team game, yes, this is a Sonic Team game, obviously not including the original classics, then I'm led to believe that somehow they were able to use that Mania code to their advantage, right? Unless Sonic Team just figured it out on their own, I don't know. Editor's note, it seems Christian Whitehead quote tweeted that physics tweet with a thumbs up. So either that confirms that he's part of this game somehow, whether he's actually actively working on it, or if they did use his code, he's like, thumbs up, of course the physics are accurate because they used my Mania code, like duh, but I don't know, but he's given his seal of approval in some form. I guess so far it's looking good in the physics department. On top of that, we got a big piece of news, and this apparently came from a newsletter for the game or something, but I haven't gotten an email regarding this, and I'm pretty sure I'm subscribed to this newsletter. But it says co-op and PvP multiplayer gameplay. So you got the local 4-player co-op that we already know about, play through the entire campaign with friends, but then they've also got a local and online battle mode where you can challenge players from around the world. So even though the co-op is only local, they have got some form of online mode, which I would definitely like to see more of this battle mode because this could be some of the most fun in the game. So they claim the whole game is brand new and original. The physics seem to be decent. We know the game is going to cost $60 plus some kind of $70 premium version. There's been a lot of debate surrounding the price, so I figured it'll be good to do a poll. I asked people, how many zones do you think there'll be in Sonic Superstars? And the most popular result was 8 to 10 zones. All the other options, which were 7 zones or less, 11 to 13 zones, or 14 zones or more, had around the same amount of votes. And to be honest, I could see 8 to 10 zones being a thing, right? Some people are saying we should have gotten more because it's a $60 game, but let's face it, they only charged $60 because they got cockier for the multimedia era. So simple as that. Mania costed $30, and that was a very strong game. Forces costed $40, and that was their main release for the year. But since then, we had the movie in 2020, the movie sequel in 2022, which was really good. They both did numbers. Sonic Movie 2 sold more than the first movie. Sonic's clout is high right now. Frontiers sold over 3 million units, on track to become the highest selling 3D Sonic game at some point. So this is strictly an ego move. Simple as that. If they had made this game in 2017, which they could have, let's face it, because it's coming to the Switch, it would have been 30 to 40 max. I saw an interesting comment on my video, and it said here, my main concern so far is that they're only showing off 2 or 3 environments, and this game is coming out in a few months. Considering the leak stated how this game got shelved midway through development, I'm worried this may not have that much content. We saw it with Frontiers, where we expected a 4th unique island that had yet to be revealed, only for it to be another half of Kronos. My worry is the game will either be extremely short or will pad itself out by playing through the same environments at different times of day and treating it as unique zones or something. So when it comes to the zone count, I could see how this could be a factor. I mean, looking at the trailer, if you don't include the special stages, which Sonic 1 special stage and then the Enerbeam looking thing, if you don't include those, it was like 3 to 4 environments. I think one environment was like 2 different times a day, so it looks like another one. We saw about 4 environments. So let's say they do 3 acts so they can use each environment even more than usual, because I mean Sonic 4 did 3 acts. That's 4 zones, 3 acts per zone. You're looking at 12 levels. But if they use each zone twice, then now you got 8 zones, 3 levels per zone. That's 24 levels now. What would they have to do to use a zone twice? Change the time of day, change 1 or 2 textures. They could pull it off, right? Altering the music could be another big thing they could do, which, speaking of which, I think Tee Lopes kind of hinted that he's working on the soundtrack, but this is not a confirmation, but yeah. But nonetheless, I am curious to see how many zones will be in the game, because that is a big factor in like the price that they're asking for this thing. But if you're asking me if I think it's going to be a great classic Sonic game, I still think the bar for this game is Sonic 4. Again, I enjoyed Sonic 4, but from what I've seen, it doesn't look like it's going to be like on the classics level, on the Mania level, and it's surprising how many people are okay with that. I mean, I've lowered my expectations because I have to, right? I'm not getting disappointed again. But so many people are okay paying double the price for a classic Sonic game that they pretty much almost certainly know is not going to be as good as Mania. But I mean, it's the Sonic, right? We worship and we serve. Let me know what you guys think about this game so far. Will you be getting the standard edition, the premium edition? Will you be getting the modern Amy skin? Are you not getting the game? What do you like about the game? What you dislike about the game? And of course, a big shout out to all my channel members. If you want to become a channel member, you can click the join button next to the subscribe button. But yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell. make sure to check out the non-signing channel. The link will be in the description. But that's all I have to say right now. So, Premy out.